So I'm a couple of months overdue on one of these. I don't really have any excuse either outside of it being work related, which is the one excuse I always default back to. Although, to be honest, I have been extremely busy as of late. I wanted to be a little bit more consistent in these uploads. I don't like waiting for a month at a time like I do. It just seems like that inevitably ends up happening. Plus, I went through a kind of a dry spell where I didn't have any fresh ideas. Like I would get an idea here or there, but it was like, well, I kind of covered that pretty exclusively in other videos, and I generally I get a lot of ideas, and if I forget to jot them down or I forget to write anything down or put them in some note somewhere, if anybody ever finds one of my notebooks when I'm dead, they're going to think I'm totally insane because it's just half sentences and half of it's written with references that only I would get because I'll use like pop culture references from movies and stuff, but if I don't write those down, they'll slip. But the idea I had for this one, I just happened to have jotted it down not too long ago, and it was involving when it comes to a religious cult like AA. There's only really one commandment in truth, and it's don't drink. All the rest of the blabber that you get in those rooms and all the rest of the pseudo-religious nonsense is just that, nonsense. In fact, the evidence is pretty frighteningly clear when you can look back on, when I can look back on my time in the cult and see that 99% of the word salad that they're tossing around all over the place is just for the mutual admiration of the people sitting in the room listening to them, even though in my opinion, a lot of the so-called admiration that these delusional old-timers think they're feeling is largely all in their head. If you look around the room during any AA meeting, 90% of the people look bored when someone's talking, or they look nervous and antsy. And what I actually think is going on is everybody's waiting on their turn to talk. In fact, some of the, I was reading online not too long ago from someone who had attended some of those Zoom meetings during the COVID thing, which I don't know if those are still going on or if in-person meetings have resumed or not. That's one nice thing about being free from the AA cult is I don't have to worry about any of that any longer. In fact, I read somewhere that a lot of people, because of the lockdowns and because of the Zoom meetings and all of that kind of stuff, actually took the opportunity to realize they didn't need AA to keep them sober all along and left. So as shitty as COVID has been and as shitty as the lockdowns are, and I mean, I don't wish the COVID disease on anyone at all, and I would love to see the pandemic end as much as anybody else. There has been one good upside to it. It's caused a lot of people to leave the trap of the AA addiction, and I think being addicted to a cult is just as much of an addiction as being addicted to booze. Otherwise, in fact, it was a lot like an addiction to booze. I kept going to them even when I hated everything I was hearing, and it was making me more miserable, kind of like drinking. You drink a bottle of vodka and you feel horrible the next day, and you feel you're drinking more to escape from it, which is just prolonging your suffering and your agony, but you can't get out of it. AA cult is a whole lot like that. But something I was thinking about when it comes to, I know someone had mentioned online something about the love bombing you get when you know, which is really the way they trap and snare you in. You know, at first you find out there's a lot of this blabber when you knew about how, you know, everybody's accepted in AA and everybody is equal in AA and everybody's given an equal voice in AA, and you find out really quickly it's kind of like the George Orwell book Animal Farm, where the animals take over the farm and they start creating commandments, and one of the commandments is all animals are created equal, and then later on it's given a constitutional amendment, so to speak. It's all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And I think that very obviously in AA, we're not all on equal playing fields when we're members of the religious cult. The old-timers, the gurus, the people who control the way the whole entire thing operates, those are the ones that are given a status of authority that is above the rest of the newcomers and the relapsers like I was, or the people that are in there in treatment. It used to crack me up how they would say, nobody gets to AA by mistake. God brings us all here. But then they would turn right around and they would say, you're just here getting the sheet signed because you're in treatment. You're not serious about getting sober. You know, the contradiction thing I've addressed a whole lot on here because, I mean, AA's got so many contradictions to it that I think it would be like a month-long task to sit down and go through every single contradiction and write them all down, not to mention all the blabber that you hear in the rooms. But I actually came to a conclusion that all that blabber is literally just that blabber. None of the people who are spouting all this shit, the AA preachers, the AA control freaks, and the gurus, and the people that love to play God when they're your sponsor, none of them believe in any of that. And the evidence is, to rip off a line from Clockwork Orange, the evidence is in the old glasses. It's in what you see. Nobody in their everyday life that I've dealt with who was an old-timer or a guru, or even in those so-called meetings after the meetings where they bash everybody and they talk terrible about everybody, nobody follows any of that. It would be impossible to follow all of that because the program itself is a mishmash of ideas that cancel each other out, that aren't logically consistent. And I came to the conclusion that nobody really even believes in any of that. What they do is they go to those meetings and they get a big rush, a big high, a big dopamine rush off of being able to spout all this stuff, and then their perceived heads, they think the whole entire room is there worshiping in them, and they're thinking to themselves, look how admired I am when I'm talking. In fact, I was convinced with a lot of the old-timers, especially some of the real mean-spirited bullying ones, that they didn't actually ever have a problem with addiction, that was one place that they had to go to get their fix every night, because it was the one place where they could talk and talk and talk, and an entire room full of people was forced to listen to them. Why anybody would want to do that, I don't know. I mean, the last thing I would want is for a room full of people to listen to me night after night after night. Maybe that was a good thing that I got branded a chronic relapser and nobody paid any attention to anything that I did or said, because everybody knew that I was going to be drunk within a month or a couple of months, or, 6 or 7 months I'd make 1 or 2 times and then I'd be drunk again. Nobody expected anything of a chronic relapser except that he's going to continue to fail and die, and I think they all get a rush when somebody dies. But in truth, the only commandment of the religious cult, it's a really bizarre religious cult when you think about it, they only have one real commandment that everybody must obey, and that's you don't drink, which is an odd thing for a religious institution in general. Most religions, if you look at a religion from the interior of it, they have a sacred text, they have a set of commandments, they have a set of laws, they have a set of rules, they have a set of ethics that members are expected to adhere to and to follow. And in AA, while you do have a whole lot of all the blabber about morality and all the blabber about inventories and character defects and sins and 7 deadly sins in one point of the literature and all that, nobody actually, in my actual opinion, expects anybody to live like that, and nobody actually believes any of that, because the evidence, by what I saw with every old-timer and the way they behaved and everything, is time was the only license you needed to bully people and treat people like garbage. If you could say that you had 20 years without a drink, you were an esteemed elder. You were one of the untouchables. You were a part of the elite ruling class because you hadn't touched a drop of alcohol in 20 years. Didn't matter if you were abusing sponsees. Didn't matter if you were sexually exploiting people who were vulnerable and fresh out of treatment. Didn't matter if you were stealing out of the basket. Didn't matter if you were... was just a garbage human being in general. If you hadn't had the drink in 20 years, you were given that esteemed honor of being one of the elite ruling class. And it was really strange to me how AA, if you are engaged in any kind of activity which is less than savory, if somebody like myself, who was a chronic relapser, pointed that out, they would say to you something like, well, he's been sober a long, long, long time, as though that means something. Or, who are you to judge, or something like that. I've addressed this in other videos before. Who are you to judge only applies to the esteemed ruling class that hasn't had a drink in a very long time. If you drank yesterday, let's just say you're an ordinary guy who's going to work, who's living in the best he can, who's living day to day like 99% of us all are, but just doing our thing, paying our bills, going about our daily business. But God forbid you slipped up and you had a drink on the way home one night. You just stopped at a bar, you were just feeling like it, and you just said, I got to have a drink. And you had a drink, and you go to AA the next day and you say, well, I had a drink last night, you'll be treated with shock and horror, and you have to go before almost like the Inquisition of interrogation. Well, what happened? What happened? What'd you do? What happened? I mean, something must have happened. You did something wrong. You didn't work the steps. You didn't have a sponsor. You didn't blah, 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 blah. You committed a mortal sin because you had a drink. Oddly enough, the thing you came there to do is quit drinking. And it's supposed to be for the alcoholic who still suffers. It's supposed to be for the person who's still struggling. Yet when you struggle, you're treated like an outcast. You're treated like an undesirable. You're treated like a subhuman. But if you're supposedly someone who's gone 20 years without a drink, who obviously doesn't need help because you're not struggling with a drinking problem, you're above all reproach. So the only commandment that anybody follows in the AA religion is don't drink. Now, it's been brought up to me before, do any of these old-timers actually sneak and drink on the side? I don't have any concrete proof of that. I know of old-timers who pop tranquilizers like they're candy. I know old-timers who smoke pot. I know old-timers who do all kinds of hard drugs, and it used to crack me up that I don't care what you do. I don't care if you light a joint. I don't care if you pop tranquilizers. I really don't care. I don't care how you live your personal life. But don't come in there on your high horse, on your moral high horse, and look down on somebody like me because, God forbid, we had a drink. I mean, you're going through life fucked up on drugs. You're certainly not some esteemed Yoda who has all the knowledge and all the wisdom as to what people should do and how they should live their everyday personal lives. It's funny how the old-timers want to micromanage everything you do and every aspect of everything that happens in a newcomer's life or responsee's life. Sinuses are scrolling with me today. But they're completely off the hook for anything they do. Why? Because they haven't violated the one sacred commandment of AA. They haven't drank. Do I think personally some of them sneak it on the side? Absolutely. Like I said, let's just say the people who pop tranquilizers all the time or the people who smoke pot all the time, you're not going to be able to get a drug every day if you're I think any drug addict out there can verify that. You're not going to be able to get your drug of choice every day. There's going to be a day where when you call your dealer or whoever it is you're shopping with or whatever, they're not going to have any, and you're going to spend an entire day on the phone, driving around or walking or whatever it is you're doing, looking for your drug. And I'm supposed to believe that if you're doing whatever drug you're doing and you're pretty much relying on that drug to get you through each and every day, that you wake up one day and the drug's not there. You're not gonna stop at a gas station and buy a quart of beer. You're not gonna stop at a liquor store and buy a half pint because you don't want to compromise your sobriety. It's kind of like when I would see the old timers that would lie about, they get in there and they tell these grandiose tales of what they did when they were drunk. They've got this, it's funny how they accuse everybody of wanting to be a legend in their own mind, but that's exactly what they think they are by the way they brag and they talk and, whatever. If you're lying to me about your past, you're lying to me about what kind of person you are, I'm spiritual, I'm working all these steps, when in truth you're none of those things. I'm supposed to 100% believe you when you say you haven't had a drink in 20 years. Don't think so. For one thing, AA kind of discourages honesty when you think about it because you got the one commandment that you absolutely cannot violate. I mean, if you're a 20-year old-timer who's got all the power and got all the privileges of being one of the elite, and you fuck up and admit that you drank, I mean, you go all the way to the bottom. You might, you got to pick up the whole white chip, do the walk of shame and all that kind of thing, and then you got to be ignored. I mean, nobody's going to call on you any longer. Nobody's going to listen to you run your mouth any longer. Nobody's going to ask you to sponsor them any longer. So you're kind of going to lose a lot if you admit to slipping and having a drink. And so I'm pretty sure that, there's a lot of people in there who have slipped and had a drink and never told anyone about it. But it's a funny religion to me, a religion that only has one commandment. The one commandment is don't drink. You can commit battery, you can commit assault, you can sexually harass people, you can commit any kind of crime you want, but if you hadn't had that drink, then You're just progress, not perfection. You're just another alcoholic trying to get better. We're all sick in here. You're given all kinds of passes and privileges. I can't think of any particular religious system or moral system, morals being a very loose term in a lot of religions, because a lot of religious leaders don't practice what they preach. But I can't think of one that only has the one commandment: just don't take a drink. God will bless you so long as you don't take the drink. Now, if you're over here stealing from a guy, you're over here robbing somebody, or you're over here ripping somebody off, God is perfectly fine with that. He's perfectly okay with that. He's the spirit of the universe that's going to connect everything and get you parking places and give you extra time to talk in meetings and give you an opportunity to talk about what a wonderful human being you are and give you all these magical blessings so long as you don't drink. Now if you take that drink, well, then all kinds of jails, institutions, death, and all that other kind of thing. But I don't actually think that any of them secretly believe any of that bullshit they're talking about. I think they know that that's scripted. I think they know that's expected of them. And I think that that's how they get their little high or their little rush or their little fix or whatever it is they're looking for when they go to those meetings. I mean, there is a power trip that I noticed that a large majority of AA people seem to be on. It's really kind of an interesting thing, though, to me when you think about it. I mean, you're not making any money off of this. You're not actually getting anywhere in life because of this. You're not actually getting any benefit of this whatsoever. You're just a small-minded bully that just enjoys picking on the less fortunate, and you have found an outlet to do it. You're no longer the asshole in high school that every unpopular kid lives in terror of. Now you're an adult doing the same fucking thing, and you found an outlet to do that among adults. And that's pretty much the whole entire synopsis of what AA is. And it's really a tragic thing when you think about it. No wonder that place sucks the energy and the soul out of so many people, including myself. And no wonder people can't quit drinking as a result of it. Anyway, hopefully it won't be another 2-3 months before I get another one up. And of course, whenever I start doing these, I get a whole bunch of ideas that I want to talk about, and I better jot them down now, otherwise I'll forget. Until next time.